Hello, Ventura County. You are listening live to Girls on the Air. We are Real Women in Real Estate, AM 1590, KVTA. I'm Traci Baldwin Mahone.
And I'm Karen Campbell. We have a great show lined up for you guys today. We have Tiana on the line, Tiana Sanchez, and she is a CEO and founder of Tiana Sanchez International. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, Ventura County. You are listening live to Girls on the Air. We are Real Women in Real Estate, AM 1590, KVTA. I'm Traci Baldwin Mahone.
And I'm Karen Campbell. And we're very excited to have Tiana Sanchez with us. She is a CEO and founder of Tiana Sanchez International. She teaches leadership, talent. She's a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and a podcast host, an author of Undefeatable and FD, The Upside of Failure. So welcome, Tiana. We're so glad to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me on the show. Good to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with all this.
Well, doing the work that I do now was really a divine intervention. I was laid off in 2011, coming on the receiving end of the financial crisis. I worked in as a financial banker and as a manager, and when they were laying people off, I was one of the people they laid off. And I decided at that point that I didn't really want to go back working into corporate environment for someone else, that I would like to start my own business. And so 90 days after I got that notice, I started what is now known as Tiana Sanchez International. And so now, 12 years later, we've worked with a whole host of companies, from utility organizations, aerospace, nonprofit, local government agencies, and we're providing what I hope to be really great services to help these organizations thrive.
That's awesome. So what kind of hurdles did you have in doing that? Was it easy? Was it hard?
I'm sure every entrepreneur or business owner will say that it wasn't easy. I don't ever say that it was easy. So there were certainly obstacles. One of the obstacles being financing and funding. As a new entrepreneur, especially being a woman of color, the opportunity to get seed money or capital was scarce at the time. And I decided to bootstrap. So I actually had savings from my account, and I exhausted those savings to literally start my business. So one of the obstacles was the financial obstacle, but the other one, which was crystal clear to me, was that I'd never run a business before. So I didn't have the business acumen. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't even have the contacts or the network. So going into starting a business, one of the things that I did early on, Karen, was I went back to the companies that I had worked for as a W-9 employee and started rebuilding those relationships. And interestingly enough, one of the companies that I had worked with became one of my very first clients when I started my brand new business.
And so tell us a little bit about what you do in your business.
Yes, so we essentially help evaluate leadership effectiveness from the inside out. And so what that looks like is we will work with organizational leaders and we help to assess their effectiveness. We created a document. It's called the Propelr 360. And what it does, it assesses an organization's effectiveness on 10 pillars. And those 10 pillars include a unified vision, having clear roles and responsibilities, skills and competencies, high-impact activities, leadership effectiveness, effective communication, strong accountability, generational and cultural intelligence, success habits, and performance management. So we ask the leaders to go through this assessment, and we give them a grading scale. So they get a scorecard at the end of it to see where they are. And from that assessment, we're able to pinpoint what are their most critical areas of opportunity. So out of those 10, there may be 2 or 3 that really stand out. And so that helps us in a very targeted approach to say, okay, this is where you scored in all 10, but these 3 right here is where we want to focus our attention. And so we will provide, depending on what they are, we'll provide some consultation, some strategy. If it's leadership effectiveness, we may provide training and development for staff. We may provide executive coaching. So there's a whole host of services that we may provide.
So what kind of communication advice can you give our audience, our listeners, when you're the only woman in the room?
Well, having been the only woman in the room many times, I think that in of itself is a predicament, but we can see it as an obstacle or we can see it as an opportunity. And so for me, being the only in the room, and whether that's the only woman of color, the only woman with a disability, whatever your only is important that you utilize your voice, that you learn how to speak assertively, and that you communicate what it is that you need. I like looking at the audience in the room. Who's in the room? People typically make decisions one of two ways. They either use like a feeling style or logic and data. And so when you're the only in the room, and this is for anybody, you want to look at your audience. If I'm looking to influence or persuade a decision in a particular direction, who's on the receiving end of that? So if it's someone who's a feeling decision maker, I'm going to be offering ideas and opinions that relate to feeling. How is this going to affect our organization? How is this going to affect the people that we serve? How is this going to affect how our employees see us as leaders? So that's the feeling side. If I'm a fact-based person that's in front of me, then I'm going to come with numbers. Okay, how is this going to increase our productivity? How is this going to increase our effectiveness or efficiencies? And so being the only in the room means you got to do a little extra preparation and also be assertive in your approach, but using it as an opportunity and not an obstacle. Here's the other thing, Karen, I would say. Being the only in the room means that you don't have to accept if there's inappropriate behavior in the room. You have to be willing to call out if you feel dismissed or overlooked. There's a new study that was done by the Women of Influence just this last year, Karen, and they talked about how there's this new syndrome. It's called the tall poppy syndrome. And this is something that occurs when women in the workplace are being belittled and attacked for just climbing the career ladder, for being too ambitious. And the poppy comes from when poppies grow too tall, they get cut so that they can be the same size as everyone else. And so these are real things that are happening in our workplaces, and we have to be willing to speak out against those.
Well, in honor of Women's History Month, we're so excited to say that we need people like you. We need people to stand out. We need people to acknowledge the talents of women and what we do. So give us 3 tips of what you can do to acknowledge Women's History Month.
Well, if you're an organization, you can have a celebration or an honor women, but inviting both men and women. I spoke at an event this week for an entertainment industry company, and they had a celebratory event, so you can acknowledge them through an event where you invite someone to speak, a guest speaker, or do something like that. Some companies have the ability to have employee resource groups, or ERGs or EBRGs, and they can create women in technology. You can span that. It could be women's group, it could be women in technology, it could be women engineers, and so that, I think, is something to do. And also look at the history. Look at the women in history that have made contributions. I think this should be done not just in the month of March, which is Women's History Month, but also throughout the entire year, because there's incredible inventors and artists and engineers and astronauts and women that are really crushing it in their field that we want to make sure to highlight and acknowledge. And so those are just a couple of very quick tips that people anywhere can do.
Great. Well, give us an idea of where people can find you and how they can reach you if they have a question.
Yes. So you can find me at tianasanchez.com, and there's some information there. You can also get my books, and the name of the books is F'd Up. I know it's a little hard to pronounce, but it's F'd Up, The Upside of Failure and Undefeatable. And you can reach me at tianasanchez.com is my email address. Love to connect with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you. Well,
Thank you.